Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave. A little bit of a later start this morning as I am dealing with the consequences of quitting coffee. I think I'm on day number 3 or day number 4, and I can tell you right now, if you're thinking about quitting, don't fucking quit. Just keep on going. It's not worth it. Anyways, plenty to talk about today. I want to follow up on yesterday's short-term and medium-term analysis. Obviously, the long-term and the macro still looming overhead, and especially with CME's closing yesterday for the weekly, we do have a few things to say over there, and then of course, setting up for Sunday's weekly closure for spot price action as well. So plenty to talk about all across the board, and we'll also look at traditional market as well, and maybe even a little bit of Forex. So with that said, let's put the focus on the Krown trading application, which can be found at app.krowntrading.net, and we do see that once again the open interest kind of hanging around that 2.5 billion marker. Obviously, it's about 50 million below that level right now, but that is the interplay that we saw on breaking the last sort of long-term range that correlated with price action. So I do want to keep that one in mind, as if Bitcoin does break the long-term range, which in this case would be above 11,900 on a 12-hour or daily closure. We could use lower term timeframes, but we'll have to raise that up to probably 12,000. We'll look at that in just a second here. But I want to see if open interest follows through with that above that same level if that condition is met. And likewise to the downside as well, using the pivot point of that, or sorry, using the same pivot point that we've been using for the past couple of weeks or 3 weeks since we got in this consolidation range at about 11,000, denoting a change behavior for the overall trend and many other things. But with that said, we do see that Bitcoin dominance also coming down a little bit more from yesterday today as well. These are actually areas that these are levels that we have not seen hit in quite some time. So it is suggesting that yes, we are still seeing healthy rotations in cryptocurrency market. And while Bitcoin is essentially setting in this base between 11,000 and 12,000, or you could even say 11,500 to 12,000 now, that is overall healthy for alts, and we're going to see essentially, the same sort of rotations that you expect to see in traditional market between like major indices, and in all the various sectors and subsectors. So with that said, we'll actually be looking at some alts today as well, I suppose. Why the fuck not, man? It's shitcoin carousel Saturday, I guess, and we do have the fear and greed index also taking up 1 point from yesterday today, as well as Bitcoin does head up a couple $100 from once we last spoke in this very one-sided conversation. So with that said, let's get into the actual price action charts right here. Starting off with the, we could look at the weekly for CMEs. And I do want to start off with this because I was harping on this quite a bit over the past few weeks, and that is the weekly closure on CMEs with respect to the topside Schrödinger band, which has essentially gotten our long-term trends for better or worse on the macro scale quite well. And while Bitcoin did have a chance to close above it yesterday, it actually did not. A few bucks below, so fair enough. It is relatively close, about $75 below, I believe, as yes, it was right above 12,001 if you want to be exact there, which would have denoted and made it very easy to look for a continuation here into the mid $12,000 range. Unfortunately, that wasn't necessarily high yesterday. Doesn't mean that it's not going to happen, just it would have been nice to see that confirmation leading into this next week of price action. So now the focus goes on to the weekly close tomorrow night at Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern time for spot price action. That is where it's technically going to have a chance to do it on spot as well, which right now it is above, or actually it's actually not above right now. It's about $5 below. But of course, in 24 hours worth of trading period, or actually a little bit more than that, maybe more like 36, that's a fucking eternity in cryptocurrency land. So you can imagine, what sort of debauchery we can get into between now and tomorrow's closure for the weekly. But it is in the cards, and I do want to have a massive focus on that coming into tomorrow. But for right now, let's go back actually over here and go into the lower term timeframes, kind of follow up from yesterday. So I believe yesterday we were hanging out somewhere in this region right here, after setting that base above 11,500. And this is going to sound a little bit like hindsight kind of bullshit right now, but I just want to explain for the people who have been here for the last, at least watching for like the last week, because these things typically do take time, especially in a nice consolidation round like this. But what did we say coming into this week? Bitcoin probably going to play out some downside, probably going to retest about 11,300. That was these closures right here, kind of marking off the bottom side support of this proverbial ascending triangle, which is a bullish reaccumulation formation, meaning that statistically speaking, more likely to break out to the upside than the downside. That doesn't mean it's always going to happen, but we have a very nice way to be judging this right here. And then of course, once Bitcoin regained, as we said, 11,500, very likely to initiate hidden bullish divergence on the 12-hour, which, as you can see, takes a few days to play out. But typically speaking, it is something worth keeping in mind, because it typically does play out at the same time. And what do you know? Bitcoin actually heading up all the way to the last prior high at about $12,000, 12,013 actually, if you want to be exact on BitMexico. Now, I did say about 11.8 to 11.9 region for that trigger. Bitcoin getting up to this level right here does insinuate overall good things, but still, the critical criteria for denoting that next big break to the upside and subsequent move to very likely the mid 12,000s and probably beyond on the higher term timeframes, but on at the very least short and medium term targets will be initiated to about 12.5 to 12.6 is if Bitcoin can close either a 4-hour dildo above what is this level right here, about 12,050. That would do it for me. Or take out this wick high that we saw on 9th of August at 12,110, or a little bit of an easier way as well would be using the 12-hour or daily, getting a closure above the bottom side of this blue box territory, about 11,900. You'll notice that I'm using more aggressive numbers for the higher term timeframes, naturally speaking, because they're going to have more, they're going to hold more weight. And this is really fucking important to get across right now because it is the weekend. I am very defensive against any sort of strange liquidity grabs, which for what it's worth, everything does look more or less good here. The problem with it is that I just don't trust really weekend price action. And while sometimes we have seen breakouts in the same direction as the prior week's trend, we have not seen reversals from the prior week's trend. So in this case, if we did see some down action and Bitcoin gets brought back down to like 11,500 over the weekend, I would look at that as another opportunity. Very likely before giving another test to the upside. However, right now it is, things are looking good. Just want to see these higher term timeframes kind of set in place so that there's something verifiable or documentable, at least for setting up trades leading into that next breakout. Like I said, to about the 12.5 to 12.6 region. There is a measure move from this ascending triangle, which is pointed towards right at 12.6 actually, if you want to be super exact. So I would be looking around there. It's also a long-term historical level. If we go back to July of 2019, you'll notice that this was a nice little liquid zone rejection before the ultimate dooms drop. After that, going from the $12,500 level to, I guess ultimately like 4,000 essentially. So it does have historical relevancy, but I would really only be looking at that on a short and medium term time frame. Actually, as far as the next major levels from the weekly perspective, we really don't have anything until like the mid to upper 13,000s. If Bitcoin can confirm those lower time frame triggers that we just spoke about, somewhere around here would look about right. Yeah, anywhere between about 13,500 and 14,000, kind of where we saw the highs being put in of last year in June. So all of that would still be relevant. Of course, that would be more of like a long-term thing, but if Bitcoin does break above 12,000, especially on those timeframes that we spoke about, then, short-term and medium-term, I'd be targeting 12.5 to 12.6-ish region, and then, more long-term, I'd probably look for a pullback from that region on the short-term, and then work its way up here overall as the structure gets filled out. And so that's essentially what I'm looking for right now. Doesn't mean that it's always going to happen. Just waiting for that trigger to be sprung, and because Bitcoin has very nice and orderly levels here, it makes it makes it quite easy to set up trades. Just doesn't mean that they're always going to work out. Anyways, while we are here on the lower term timeframes, Bitcoin just closed a 4-hour right below the bottom end of this blue box territory. I want to be very deliberately clear with this. That would have not, at least for myself, as a more conservative trader, especially on the weekends, that would have not denoted an actual break of structure here, initiating that upside move on a 4-hour, on a 12-hour or daily. Yes, I would feel comfortable with that. But nonetheless, this does look more or less it does look more or less constructive and very likely to do it. It's just, like I said, I'm very skeptical on the weekends. It doesn't mean that it can't happen. We have seen it happen in the past before. Just I'd rather err on the side of caution. Looking at 4-hour momentum oscillators, we actually do look a little bit choppy on the 4-hour Stokes, and we will be turning them back down if Bitcoin does essentially fail to get continuation on this next 4-hour dildo, closing above 11,900. So it is a little bit of a do or die situation here on the short term, and that's also making me a little bit more muted in my response. It wouldn't be asking for too much to have a pullback over the weekend. Felt the space a little bit more and then set up for perhaps a nice break during the next trading week. But looking at 4-hour Stokes right here, they are going to be crossing down. Like I said, as long as we close below 11,900, doesn't mean that it's doesn't mean that it's 100% going to cross to the downside, as we quite literally are at 11,900 pretty much right now. But what it's suggesting is that if Bitcoin is going to break to the upside, it happens essentially on this drive, as momentum will naturally turn down. if we fail to get continuation technically on this next closure coming in 2 hours and 5 minutes and 4 seconds. Looking at the 4-hour RSI, it looks a lot more healthy. There, I don't really see any major issues here. No divergences either way that haven't been played out just yet. And well, I'm sure someone. Well, no, actually, there's not even bearish divergence there. Yeah, so nothing of the sort, in fact. And to me, from a major moving average perspective, everything kind of splaying out with lower periods trading above higher periods as they get more and more divergence away from each other, more or less good as well, suggesting that the trend here is your friend, so to speak. Anyways, going over to a 3-hour, do we see the same thing? Yeah, we do. Again, same thing on the 3-hour Stokes, kind of hot up there, and they are trying to turn down right now and will turn down with any sort of a closure below where? Below 11,900. So we do see confluence here, unlike what we saw earlier this week. That was suggesting, that pullback into the 11.3 region. And let's see if that's mediated between the 2-hour and hourly. Yeah, 2 hours showing 11,950 and hourly showing momentum actually back to the upside as long as we're above 11,880 closes. So all of these, of course, work together and would suggest that, yes, pressure is to the upside pretty much right here, right now. And if Bitcoin bulls do want to break it up, it would be a good setup. I'll put it that way. It would be a good setup. But if they fail to close, especially these next two 4-hour dildos above that 11.9 pivot, very likely we will come back down and fill out the range a little bit more, maybe back down to 11.5 support somewhere, over the next week. But for right now, things are more importantly from a trend perspective, from a major moving average perspective, and from an RSI perspective, which all speak towards more long-term type of moves in comparison to the Stokes, are suggesting, constructiveness and health here. So that is overall good. Looking at our medium-term timeframes like the 10-hour and 12-hour, we do see that momentum is naturally going to be the upside and a very wide berth here as long as we are above 11,450. So a very wide range, very generous, and we do see that 10-hour RSI is more or less constructive here as well, regaining the exponential, looking like it wants to work its way up. And we did have that hidden bullish divergence way back on over here. I think that that's already played out, and I would say the same thing about the 12-hour as well. In fact, even more so, as that was a pretty aggressive read and a pretty aggressive response as well, which is good, which is definitely good. But more importantly, we are seeing that the medium-term time frame momentum oscillators are definitely turning in a more nice way for the old bulls here. We do see 12-hour Stokes turning north, actually after rejecting the neutral zone here, and kind of using the same area. In fact, getting a little bit more aggressive over time. Picking it up from the bearish control zone, then rejecting it right here, then rejecting the neutral zone right here. Now heading back up to test around the bullish control zone. Typically that is, more or less a very nice setup. Looking at 12-hour RSI, regaining the exponential at the same time. All these things work together, and this very much looks like it wants to head into the bullish control zone. And at that point, you have to really be thinking, where would price action be? And well, we can actually see exactly where price action would be. So let's check it out right here. I'm going to use like a 65 just to kind of give it some room. Hey, hold on. God damn it. Let me show entered RSI price level. Yes, 70. No, I just said 65. Hey. Oh, I'm like I said, man, I am operating off of a massively low amount of sleep and all sorts of headaches going on from the lack of caffeine in my bloodstream. Yeah, showing 12,000. So it would say that if we do close this next 12-hour above 12,000, then yes, it will get back into that region. I do think that even 11,900 is probably good enough, as it's going to be a continuation sort of drive. Anyways, with Stokes already pointed north from that region, I do think that that's, I don't want to use this term, but it does seem a little bit more of or more or less of a formality here. However, weekend time does make me a little bit skeptical. Looking at the daily, what do we have here? Daily showing the same level as all of the lower term timeframes. Daily momentum oscillators. The daily Stokes will cross back up to the upside with any sort of a closure above 11,900. They're all coming together right here. I mean, this is kind of what I think a lot of people have been waiting for. Or at least the patient traders. Same thing on daily RSI. We have that same hidden bullish divergence. In fact, I think that this one looks like it could still play out a little bit more too. Typically, you'll get an official test back up to the exponential, and in this case, we haven't necessarily got there just yet. It's right under it, but well, it kind of is right there, to be fair. But overall, again, what do we have here? We have an ascending triangle, bullish reaccumulation formation. Statistically speaking, it's more likely to break out to the upside than the downside. Probably somewhere, I think, from my quant friends, from my friends quant firms analysis, they showed a little bit over 60% efficacy of that. We also have volume signature confirming this as well. Hold on, let's just go over here. We also have volume signature confirming this as well, and we'll draw this one out. Nice trailing off volume from left to right. And whoops, hey, hold up. Let's and on top of that, we do see all momentum oscillators kind of getting those interesting areas. So now I want to talk about something that I've been harping on for the last couple weeks, which I think is very important for the long term. For the short term, I think that we've said most of what we need of what I want to say. I guess one last thing would be if Bitcoin were to break back down below 11,500 and close a 2-hour or 4-hour below there, I would start to initially change up some biases, at least for the short and medium term. And I would be looking for another move back down to $11,000 base. But I really don't change my long-term bias here until Bitcoin breaks 11,000. And that could actually be done on 4-hour, probably 12-hour daily, obviously going to be better. And that would drive biases back down here. My bias boner would be looking south of 10,000, actually down towards 9,800-ish region, with a bounce along the way, very likely around 10.5-ish region. But I do want to also say deliberately that I'm not necessarily looking for that to happen. That I would also like to say that I don't trade my opinion. If those conditions are met, if those levels are met, I will trade that very likely. If I'm at my computer, I will. It's that's just fucking trading, man. Opinion not needed to make money. In fact, opinions usually get in the way of making money. At least that's been my experience. So with that said, let's go over here back to the weekly. And now I want to focus on the long term once again, because I do think that the setup is there, and I think that now is the time to really be talking about it. So looking at Finex, I've been doing this chart over here, and we have a very interesting setup that we've seen many times in Bitcoin's history that essentially leads up into all of these long-term up markets. And what it typically is born off of is these long-form consolidations. You'll see the last one back here in early 2019 between about 3,100 and 4,000. This was putting in an ascending triangle on the lows, volume profile falling off to the fucking cliffs. And then once we actually broke above 4,000, initiating that, Bitcoin hangs around this region right here for a little bit of time. During that time, what are we looking at? Well, we do see that weekly RSI during the next consolidation after that major pop actually, before we get into that, I also want to show that during that whole time, this was a very aggressive consolidation, because we were seeing historical volatility percentile contract to single-digit numbers over the course of 3 months. We actually saw the same thing more recently as well. In fact, even more aggressively here, as you can see, going all the way back from March dump to April pump, and it got even to literally 0 reads for a couple days on end, which was pretty much something that you very rarely see. It does happen, but it would suggest that this consolidation over here was more aggressive, was much more aggressive in some senses than this one over here, which at the very lowest got to like a 6 read, I think. Which, I mean, we're kind of arguing very small points here, but you get the idea. These are extreme lows, and after that, gets a nice big break, and then trades sideways in this range right underneath that major 6,000 resistance right here. And during that time, that's what I really want to focus on right now, because that's what I believe Bitcoin's doing currently. First things first, weekly RSI got in the bullish control zone for the first time on that run, quite literally right here, 29th of April. 29th of April was on this delta right here as it was starting to break above that $6,000 resistance, and leading up for this next major run from basically, what do we have? Actually, it's like 5,500 all the way up to 14,000, 163% run. Very interesting. Anyways, on top of that, we do see that weekly SOX got into the critical zone here as well, right around the time that Bitcoin was doing about the same thing. It told you about 2 weeks earlier if you were aggressive, 1 week if you were conservative over the RSI. And that's kind of the allure of it. It'll tell you things faster, but not the best for long-term trends, or at least it takes on a different interpretation. On top of that, what do we see? Well, if we go over, let me actually relate that to what we're looking at right now. So we already looked at historic volatility percentile. We already looked at the ascending triangle going on right here versus this one right here. We already looked at the length of time, about 3 months in this one right here, about 3 months in this one right here. We looked at I already mentioned the volume profile. Again, lack of coffee, very not good for me. But on top of that, what is Bitcoin doing right now on the weekly RSI? It's just getting into the bullish control zone. It actually, in fact, it got there a couple weeks ago officially, and now really confirming in in there, and actually looking to drag the exponential in there as well soon enough. Also, as you know, as important, we do see that weekly Stokes are once again just about to get into the critical zone, and will confirm into the critical zone with any sort of a closure above 11,063. So about a little bit less than around $900 from where we are right now. So I'd say rather likely, although we've all seen crazier things happen in 1.5 days of trading. So, you know, I always want to put that caveat there, but things are looking good. On top of that, if we go over here to our Bollinger Band chart, we've been looking at this as well. Anytime that we've seen Bitcoin get above the top side Bollinger Band, that has been the start of long-term trends. If the 20 simple moving average on the Bollinger Bands is also having a positive slope. As you can see right here, this was not the case. Did get a closure above, positive slope? No, during the time of the actual closure above. Over here, did we have a positive slope as it closed above? Yes, and what do you know? That's the same run that produced 106% to the upside. We see the same thing going back on all these runs, and then bullish dumps down to the 20 simple in 2015 all the way to 2018. As you can see, you know, these getting more or less the short-term swings, you know, a 60% move right there, from closure to high right there, 54% move. Yep, you get what I'm going at. Another 50% move right there, another 20% move right there, another 100% move right there, another, hey, get out of my face, another 36% move right there. Not getting it as aggressively as what the RSI was showing and the Stokes were showing as well, but the same sort of, you know, the same sort of idea. And it goes back all the way to the genesis, essentially starting in, you know, 2011, 2012. And we can see the same thing on spot price action. I didn't really cover it with what we looked at on the weekly RSI, but the weekly RSI correlates with all those same sorts of pumps during the last sort of major runs. So it is of interest right now that Bitcoin does seem to have all these things in line. On top of that, we do see a weekly HODL or long signal on the weekly Joule, which I tend to favor. I don't have too much success trading against it. In fact, I've never been successful trading against it. And I'm always reminded of the fact you might even call it a trend. You might even be a conspiracy theorist thinking that I am giving that out just so that it doesn't sound like I'm giving out a single. Doesn't that sound interesting? Anyways, we can also look at the monthly as well for perspective over the long term. And, you know, all these things look good to me. I mean, the monthly is quite literally in an uptrend. Now, the monthly moves at a monthly's pace, not on a fucking hourly or God forbid, anything below that. I mean, Jesus Christ, people nowadays think that like a 4 hour is a higher time frame. It's like, what the fuck are you looking at, sir? What are you looking at? My stupid face? I smelled my sauna pads this morning and it woke me up. Not in a good way though, I'll tell you that. Jesus, fuck me. Anyways, yes, you know, the monthly did confirm an uptrend or continuation of uptrend with last month's close, because we quite literally closed on the second all-time high on the monthly scale and confirmed this as continuation with a higher low right here in comparison to our 3100 low in January 2019. And then obviously if this was our last prior high and Bitcoin closed above a higher high on that, well, the next one is naturally going to be a higher high by definition. It has to be. So what is Bitcoin, you know, what is Bitcoin most likely to do here? I do think that on the monthly scale, we're very likely to retest these closures right here, which would be actually the mid to high 13,000s. And long term, I mean, you know, major moving averages are fine. Monthly Stokes, rejection the bearish control zone and up, very nice. Monthly RSI looking constructive. Monthly Joule giving you that same HODL long signal as well, although monthly on a Joule, as you can see, doesn't even have that much history anyway. So how much can you trust that? I wouldn't, but you know, I suppose in lieu with everything else, you know, might as well throw that in there as well. So of course, that's all of the things that I'm looking at right now. It doesn't mean that's 100% going to happen. And of course, this is not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. But if Bitcoin does get that next 12-hour or daily total closure above 11,900 or a 4-hour closure above 12,000, I think it was, or just a tick above 12,100, one of those four things would all denote continuation up to the 12,500 region, short and medium term. Probably be looking for a short term pullback off there, and then continuation up to those more long term targets, and then we'll come back after that. And then if we want to take this even another step further, you know, what can we say about the volume profile? Here you go. Well, we can see that it's complete change of behavior anywhere, you know, anywhere above. I mean, really, realistically, where we are right now, as long as we're above 11,500, this thing is just thinning out like fucking crazy. So this asset is likely to get incredibly more volatile, even more so than what we saw, you know, for these last few weeks in the lower 10,000s and the lower teens when Bitcoin was playing out, you know, $500 to $1,000 dumps in a single day. Does it actually change the trend? No. I mean, the trend is your friend, and when Bitcoin just dumps down there to make a higher low, it's hard to get bearish off that. Doesn't mean that you can't make money, scalping those downs. But until we actually get a fully informalized reversal on it, at the very least a daily, or at least some daily bearish divergence, I'm not going to be calling a reversal on this run. That also means I'm never going to call it the ultimate high of a run, and I'm never going to call it the ultimate low of a run. But I will call that next continuation drive. You've probably seen this, or if you were around in 2019, I was bearish in this region right here, but I was bullish as fuck on this region right here at 4,000, which a lot of people laughed at me for. But over the next few months, this is why. This is why. And over here, I wasn't making videos during this time, but I was bullish at 19,000, 20,000. I was bearish as fuck at 16,000 right here. And my friends who were in the know, they made fun of me around there as well. But at the end of the day, man, the trend is your friend, and the weekly trend has been something to be held into throughout Bitcoin's history, as sometimes it can just be that simple. Anyways, let's go check out traditional markets and see how they're looking in comparison, as I do have a few things to say over here as well. Weekly closure for NASDAQ futures is a little bit concerning. So if there was going to be a high being put in, this actually would have the etchings of it, but I would not call it such just yet. And Friday's closure actually does not look problematic here at all if you're looking at a daily, but on the weekly, this is technically a hangman dildo, if you want to call it that. Oh, well, it's not necessarily at the actual high because we didn't wick higher than last week, but more importantly, if this were to turn into a high, which would also initiate bearish divergence at the same time, as we are slightly making a lower high on RSI, the only way that I really call that and subsequently target a move down, actually back down towards 10,000 overall over the next coming weeks, is if NASDAQ takes out the trading low of this week, which is 10,845.5, or on a daily closes the daily total below like 11,000. One of those two things, and yes, we will very likely see a more medium term, maybe even long term reversal back down to about 9,900, and then perhaps work our way lower to the low 9,000s over time. But until that happens, the trend is your friend. Hey, fucking profound words, Krown. Jesus Christ, think of something else to say, man. But at the end of the day, is this necessarily problematic right here? No, not at all. Daily RSI is kind of fighting for it. Looks like it's consolidating in a nice I guess I already have it in there, in a nice descending channel, which typically do break out of the upside as well, again, statistically speaking. And we still do have that measured move coming out of the last base being built, pointed towards 11,400, also in line with the 2-spot fib extension there too. So interesting stuff. And I do happen to think that it's probably going to glide its way up there. And I'd be looking for a short and medium term pullback from that region as well, and then reassess it after that. Also have to keep in perspective the monthly as it is. The monthly right now looking more or less like continuation. Obviously 2 weeks left to go. A lot of things can happen during that time, but for right now, I would err on the side of continuation rather than anything else until that trend changes. Looking at E-mini futures for SPY, I mean, same thing right here, right? The monthly is great perspective giver. It does look like, I mean, it hasn't even exited the uptrend since literally 2009, since 2009. It's just been in a straight uptrend on the monthly. Now on the weekly and daily, has that changed around a bit? Yes, it has. So going down to the daily right here, we can make the same sort of analysis this, sir, as NASDAQ as we can on E-minis. Now, if we do take out 3334 and 3/4 low, I would look for an extension back down to 3290 support, wherever the 21 is, as we probably will have bearish divergence on this one as well. Yeah. So I'll be targeting move back down here. Let's just call it like right under 3,300, and then potential to go more. But I'd want to see that one first and kind of the reaction to it. Looking at the weekly, kind of did close as a little bit of a doji doodle there. This does make it more or less easier to trade, however, because if we take out the low of last week at 3,319.5, I'm looking for another drive down to 3,233 region, or whatever we saw on the daily. I think that was in line, right? Yeah, it was okay. Yeah, right around there. Perfect. By the same token, if we take out last week's high, I'm looking for new all-time highs. I don't have any targets to be made on something like this. We can look at expected moves, actually. If anything, there is some extensions pointed towards 3,700. Long term, is that possible if we break above here? I actually do think so, just because, look at the monthly. But this is looking months and months out potentially. But let's go take a look at the broad market. Let's go look at the Russell index, and what do we have here? Looks, well, closing on new highs as well, man. Hard to hate that. Let's look at what the weekly looks like. Yeah, the RSI doesn't look all that bad either. Weekly looks a little bit toppy, but long term, I wouldn't look at this as toppy. It just kind of averted a death cross, and typically those are fake outs before some nice upside moves. Maybe it does trade early back down next week towards like 1550, but I'd probably be looking for it to try again higher. After that, looking at NY, what do we want to see here? Closing on new highs as well in this run. Looks more or less good for continuation on the whole, but on the daily, a little bit of a pullback, maybe an extension back down towards 12,700 first before continuation to the upside. But overall, I would be looking for continuation to the upside to probably fill up this gap at around 13,900. We just got a confirmation of a golden cross here on the daily. Not super perfect, but pretty damn good. And I do think that the strength in the overall market is going to bring this one up. So the broad market looking more or less fine here. Looking good for another drive, perhaps. I do think that things are starting to get a little bit frothy. Triple Qs looking a little bit frothy as well, but probably one more move to the upside before a greater pullback, and then we'll have the fun game of playing. Is this the reversal or not? Is this reversal land or continuation land? But yeah, so far this one still has a measure move pointed north towards 280. Yeah, 280. So a little bit more on that one as well. What about euro dollar? Let's go check out euro dollar. We said going to be creating a range between 117 and 119.5. I believe that's what we're doing right here. Did actually get a pretty damn good weekly closure. I'd be looking for another test of 119, and this is actually looking like it might have the etchings of a legitimate break above this level. But I'd still be looking at 119 to 119.5 to put in likely the next long-term high. But that's not going to, it's still going to take some time for that to actually occur. So as long as we're closing weeklies below 119.5, I look for that to just essentially be distributed into and come back down towards 115 and beyond over time. But for right now, grinding out this area and going to spend some more time trading sideways there, I do imagine. Going over and checking out some of the leaders in the traditional markets as well. Let's go check out Microsoft, closing the week well above all major moving averages, well above this horizontal right here, setting in a nice base as well. I'd be looking for it to pop back up towards 216 and a quarter, 216 and a half next week. And, we could probably make a measure move on this one as well. We have a nice trading range right here. Typically it's just going to be, top to bottom from that. And since we are on the TA nerd session of this, can just fucking do it because, well, why the hell not, man? Why the hell not? Where they're pointed up north towards about 234. So I want to mark that area off. I'm also curious, do we have any extensions coming in that region? You'll notice I'm using extensions a lot more than I ever tend to care to do. That's mostly because very rarely do you have situations like this. And what do you know? It actually does hit the 2 spot once again, extension there, which I believe that we saw early on like NASDAQ futures. I think, yeah, it was NASDAQ futures. Funnily enough, what's Microsoft a part of? What's it a big part of actually? Now, there you go. You should naturally see the things. What about Apple? Apple making new highs, or actually, getting picked up, after Thursday's close. Looks fine to me. Looks like continuation again on the daily and weekly. I'd be looking for new all-time highs. We can probably make the same sort of fib extension here too. Not the most obvious pieces to take though, so I'd actually refrain from doing that right now. I'm bullish on this one as long as it's above 439 region. Tesla popping back up to the top side of the range. This one I did call a top way on over here. Looking at it as a major macro top. I'm going to be wrong on that because of the 5-to-1 stock split. That's something that TA is just not going to get, and something that typically desperate stocks do. No, I shouldn't say that. Desperate stocks don't do that just to buff up their price. There are legitimate reasons for it, and in this one getting up to 1650 kind of does make sense because very few people, most people aren't going to be able to buy size, in stock there just because the price can be too high. So if they split it up, then it becomes more affordable. You've seen Apple do it, a few times as well. So yeah, keep that in mind. It's very likely to follow the rest of the market here. The strength in the overall market is going to lead this one to new all-time highs probably. Looking at daily RSI, looking like it wants to pop back up. It looks, it can, if it can rally in this environment, it will. And the weekly looks like continuation as well. It's going to continue. I'm going to be completely wrong about that. Again, a little bit of an interesting situation there, we'll say. But hey, that's trading, and weird things can happen. And if you live long enough, you will see all the things that you do not think can happen. And I can testify to that, especially with oil trading fucking negative prices as of recent times. What else do we want to check out? Maybe time for some magic internet money. Let's look at some shit coins. Let's look at some link coins. Actually, is a link just floating its way up to the heavens right now? I want to join the Marines, man. Got up to 18.5 bucks. Was that any one of our levels? I remember looking at like 19 and then 20. Almost got up to 19. Oh yeah, that's right. We were looking at it on the probabilities chart. Let's go take a look at it right now. This is the only way that I can really figure out something like this, and we can also look at NAS as well. Oh, you bastard! Damn it, I'm doing all the wrong ones. Fuck. All right, you get back to normal. You go wider. There we go. Second standard deviation is showing still 19.5. Third standard deviation still showing 20.5. Okay. Interesting. The way that it's kind of working right here does make me think that we actually haven't seen the top just yet. It probably does get one more drive up to those round even numbers, but I do think that, you know, somewhere between 19.5 to 20.5 is going to be a nice area for a local high being put in. I'm very, you know, if I was trading this right now, I'd be very scared of it just because I don't want to necessarily buy right here. Also don't necessarily want to sell right here. I'd rather buy out of a base, and I'd rather sell into some sort of divergence, which it is creating actually, I think. Yeah, just barely. Just barely. It actually will have the potential to make divergence today. I actually don't think that it will, but it, you know, if it does close below 16 bucks and 40 cents, it will, and then I'd be looking for another move back down to 14.5 bucks and base out there, and probably try another rally higher from there. Anyways, I also do want to check out the probabilities for. I just want to see where the rings are for. Give me the Lord of the Rings for the for NAS futures. See if that lines up with 11.4 as well. We should naturally have something around there. Should. Keyword being should. Let's see if it lines up. Yeah, first standard deviation actually does show 11,400. Second and third are 11.6 and 11.8. So usually when major highs are being put in, it will get to the second or usually actually the third standard deviation, because those are like extremes, right? So, you know, when you're talking about a move like that, you're talking about a probability of literally less than 1%. So in this case here, it would suggest that, you know, if it does get to 11.4, it probably does play out some short-term pullback from there, but I'd be maybe a little bit too premature to be looking at that as the next major high. So have to remain with the trend here. Be one with the trend, my friends. It will be your best friend if you just let it be. If you hold your hands with Bula Jesus and sing the praises, then he too will lead you to glory of green dildos from heavens above. And there's your positive message of the day. Okay, let's go check out maybe Mr. Buterol. Buter. We said yesterday the strength of Mr. Buterol out of this same base that Bitcoin, you know, kind of building a similar thing does bode well for Bitcoin as well. Closing above 420 was our initiation for a try up towards 460 to 480 liquid zone. Now this is a historic area right here. Whoops, you can barely see it now. This is a historic area here coming from the big breakdown from like the big meltdown in 2018 in July. So while I do think that it probably will test into here and probably even test into the back end of it like 485, maybe even like go for the round even number at 500. I do think that this is a great place for a medium term high to be put in. Maybe even a long-term high as well, but for right now, it would align with continuation. Assuming that the weekly closes anywhere above 420, you know, we could potentially test back down to 420 coming into next week, but I do think that would be an opportunity before testing higher overall. Things do look like they want to go a little bit more north here. Go a little bit more north. Looking at 4-hour momentum oscillators, you know, a little bit toppy on the Stokes. 4-hour RSI though, fine as it is. It's going to be creating some divergence soon, but it looks like it wants to give another try first, and then we'll talk about that. So I'd be a little bit, I'd just be looking at this area right here, 420, great number just in general, and as long as Mr. Buterol is trading above there, the general target over the next, you know, week or two is going to be around let's just call it like 480. We'll call it. And then I want to come back after that and see it in real time. Now, if 420 does break to the downside, even on a 4-hour dildo, it wouldn't even have to be all that much. I would target a move back down here, actually towards 400 even, play out a small bounce there, and then we'll talk about further continuation of the southern targets into the mid 300s if that were to happen. But for right now, things more or less look like they want to try some more upside before like a greater long-term consolidation or downside move. For example, daily stock still looking fine here. Daily RSI, it's going to be creating some divergence, but for now, continuation is the name of the game. And that's a 12-hour, or sorry, those were both the 12-hour, not the daily. Daily freshly crossing back up to the upside here on daily Stokes. Daily RSI looking okay as well. Just regaining the exponential. I do happen to think that this one's gonna glide its way higher. So while I do think that that a lot of the runs are gonna come to some medium term highs soonish, I actually do think that there's gonna be another leg up first. Again, that's my opinion. I do not trade my opinion. All those conditions have to be met that we spoke about throughout this video, which is already 40 minutes long. Holy fuck. Holy fuck. Do we want to check out anything else while we're here? I think that pretty much covers everything that I want to talk about. So I think it's time to get back on over here to Bitcoin. Bitcoin hanging out at 11,930. If we can close this 4-hour dildo above 1250, or a 12-hour above 11.9, or a daily above 11.9, or just trade above, doesn't need to have any sort of closures, but trade above 12,110, I would be targeting moves into the mid 12,000s. So over the next, I don't know, week or so, whatever it ends up being, and then I'd be using 12,000 as kind of like a base to manage risk off of. Fake outs do happen, I suppose, especially on a weekend as well. So I would be defensive against that. I want to be very deliberately clear in that, just in case. Oh, what the fuck? Whatever. Sorry, I just got weird email. And then on top of that, if Bitcoin were to get stopped right here and head back down, I don't really have any plays to be made in this region between 11.9 and 11.5. For the people who have been shorting this liquid zone right here, I feel like it's given plenty of trades, 1, 2, 3, almost 4 trades throughout this consolidation. I really don't like playing the 5th or 6th test, so I'll put it that way. Doesn't mean that it can't work. I certainly have seen it work in the past, but again, speaking statistically, not likely. Oh, we didn't even look at probabilities for Bitcoin. Hold on, you bastards. Hold on. You don't leave just yet. I got you for another 3 minutes of TA. 3 minutes of playtime. And if you know where that's from, well, you watch too many fucking movies. Is what that means. I got you for 3 minutes. Bonesaw. Let's see. Okay, cool. So where's my panel? There you are, you little shit fuck. Okay, let's just use 12,000 because right now Bitcoin's like literally above 11.9, so it's not going to be that interesting of a probability. Let's make it difficult for Bitcoin. I want to see those dildos work for it, baby. 12,000 on the next daily closure, showing a 34.12% probability. That's very high. 1 out of 3 tries that condition is going to be met. The below target probability in respect below 11,500 is very interesting here. 31.5% probability, which is very interesting because 11,500 is about more than $400 away from that trigger to the downside versus the upside being less than $100. And the probabilities being very similar to each other is actually a little bit concerning. That if bears do want to take control, right now would be a damn good time to do that. Also doing a little bit of forecasting here as well. We can see that we can see the probabilities for a week out. A week out would show times 7, 14,550 above target probability, and below target probability below 9650-ish region, 31.5%, and the inside target probability basically playing between that range. This is another third as well. So quite wide. I don't know how helpful that is for non-option traders, or people who are like just making very long-term trades and using very wide angles. But it is also of interest that volume pigs moms on the error correcting moving average are starting to turn up as well. Very interesting. Alrighty. So yeah, above 12, good. Below 11.5, not that great. Below 11, very not good for boo laws. I think that pretty much covers up what I want to look at right now. So I'd like to wish you well. I'd like to wish you the best of the best. I need to go eat a shit ton of food because I am starving like Marvin. Starving like Marvin. No, it's starving like Marvin. Sorry. Anyways, take care, and until next time.